Hello, my name's Bev and I'm the author of the book Please Eat, A Mother's Struggle to Free Her Teenage Son from Anorexia, which describes our family's battle with the deadly eating disorder, anorexia nervosa, which my teenage son Ben developed back in 2009 when he was just 15 years old. Although June 2011 was proving to be a bit of a rocky ride as far as moving forward with the eating disorder contracts we had, it was, believe it or not, things were still heading very slowly in the right direction just by perseverance, which was good news. And Ben always says that the contracts was the number one thing that helped him recover. It's just obviously because eating disorder recovery is never going to be a straight line. There are always going to be bumps in the road, and June 2011 was a pretty big pothole, to be honest. So on the 21st of June 2011, I wrote a blog post looking back at how 16 months of treatment, how effective had it been? As you know, Ben has come on leaps and bounds on the behaviours and moods front over the last 8 months. He is also managing lots of fear foods, which used to freak him out. But I can't help thinking that the treatment has been a bit odd. In fact, it's difficult to pinpoint exactly what form the treatment takes. Yes, our 2-person treatment team is brilliant at listening and asking questions. They're also great firefighters in a crisis and nice people too. Very nice indeed, actually. The psychiatrist assistant in particular is also very good at taking notes. At first I thought the purpose of this copious note-taking was so they could go away, have a meeting and formulate a strategic plan of action. But 16 months on, she's still taking notes. We've had loads of promises about the need to focus on this, that and the other, but unless these things are like some kind of hidden agenda working away in the background, I still haven't a clue what the big plan is. At first, back in February 2010, when we first began treatment, the team didn't take us very seriously, or at least that's the impression I got. Yes, Ben was underweight for his age and height, but not disastrously so. Let's forget the fact that they hadn't known him when he was a strapping athlete and rugby player. I was kind of treated like a paranoid mother and felt as if I was making a load of fuss over something that wasn't really too bad at all. Because his weight wasn't dangerously low, there was a minimum focus on the need for weight gain. Instead, the focus was on the cognitive side of things, i.e. talking about the past, talking about our issues as parents, talking about Ben's problems with socialising, being in school, anxiety, etc., but just talking about it, really. Oh, and emphasising the fact that Ben had to, quote, want to recover, unquote, before he could. Importantly, I felt at the time I wasn't being supported in my gut instinct that the primary focus should be on getting the weight back onto Ben and that we shouldn't stop until he was well and truly weight restored. It was always a case of suggesting it might be, quote, easier for Ben to handle, unquote, if we arrived at a weight, quote, he could cope with, unquote, even if that was well below his previous weight. Ben was, and is, asked what kind of weight, quote, he'd be happy to settle at, unquote. The assistant even once said that, quote, some people just choose to settle at a lower level and stay there, so they do. After all, it's their choice. No one can force them. By this stage, they are adults making their own choices, unquote. Oh, how I hated the word choices. But in those first few months of treatment, I had no idea that this kind of approach might not get us anywhere. Indeed, the weight issue has proved a definite spanner in the works, especially recently. Ref, the assistant, leading Ben to believe he'd arrived at an acceptable weight the other week, and Ref, this week, when Ben was told that, quote, medically you do need to weigh more than you do now, probably not as much as your mum would like you to weigh, but somewhere in between, unquote. This has been bugging me ever since and has led me to ask exactly how are we benefiting from this treatment? If all it does is make Ben depressed and undermine my efforts to gently push him towards a proper weight level, is the treatment actually of any use? I'm tugged in so many directions and I'm very, very confused. My own experience has shown that Ben flourished once I put my foot down, challenged the treatment team and started to follow my gut instincts on the eating and weight front. I first put my foot down back in September, and we gradually experienced a turning point in the recovery process, which started around October and continued. I put my foot down again earlier this year when I realised that we'd reached a plateau, a kind of limbo land. So, thanks to the Around the Dinner Table forum, I formulated our recovery contract, which saw Ben gain weight at an acceptable weekly level over a number of weeks. It can't be a coincidence that his current resistance to weight gain started at exactly the same time as the team challenged my concept of weight restoration, and then made that other unhelpful comment last week. Eating disorders love triangulation between parents and professionals, and obviously the eating disorder is going to take the side that implies they can finally settle at a weight they are happy with. In other words, don't listen to mum who's insisting you need to weigh even more. Translated into eating disorder think, this reads, don't listen to mum who is trying to make you fat. More on this subject later, no doubt, and that's the end of that post. It is something that bugged me. It bugged me big time, actually. And as I said, the eating disorder loved triangulation, and what I needed at this point was mega support with us all pushing together on the same page, thinking the same kind of stuff, and helping Ben to move forwards, potentially using this contract, which had come as a result of a post on the Eating Disorder Forum about behavioural contracts. And of course there was the other fact that I couldn't ignore, and most definitely didn't ignore, and that was the fact that at this stage, which was well over a year of treatment with CAMHS, Ben's weight was actually lower than it was when he started, and also he'd spent the time from round about June 2010 through to January 2011 losing more weight, and I didn't understand why the treatment was resulting in him losing weight, because surely eating disorder treatment should be about putting on weight, not losing it, especially as Ben was suffering from a restrictive eating disorder, anorexia to all intents and purposes. And so in my mind it should all have been about weight gain and a balanced diet to feed the brain. Oh, and yes, obviously you need the talking treatment as well, working alongside this, but something was just screaming out in me that he needed to gain weight. And I've said why this is before, because of the fact that twice he'd been in hospital with an abnormally low heart rate, and these days it's recognised that that is an issue that comes as part of anorexia, and it's dangerous, potentially dangerous. At this stage I was in two minds as to whether to continue treatment with CAMHS, but then I didn't know what on earth we'd do if we didn't. I know that some of the other parents on the Around the Dinner Table forum had pulled out from treatment, and one of them had a really supportive GP who she works with, who works with her daughter, a GP who really got it, and her daughter recovered with the GP's help, but that wasn't applicable to us because our GP practice has a load of GPs. You never see the same GP twice, and from my experience, they didn't know an awful lot about eating disorders, so that wasn't an option. We'd already tried the private route, which didn't work, and I didn't see how we could possibly find a private therapist who got it when we hadn't done before. So really it was the case of better the devil you know, so to speak, and staying with CAMHS. But the good news was, and I've said this before, that despite everything, Ben got on really well with the psychiatrist, and there was a kind of chemistry between them that worked, and he listened to her and he did what she suggested, and so it made sense to continue with CAMHS, and we did. You'll find a link below to my blog, and you'll also find a link to my website where you can download free PDFs of my blog, and also a link to Amazon where you can buy a copy of my book.